Greetings everyone, and welcome to the final closer look video for this Halloween season. It's only a couple days to go, and then it's the big day. You excited? Huh? You gonna dress up? You gonna go to a party? You got lots of candy? You figured out? I hope you figured out your costume by now, because it's the 29th. If you're getting them at Walmart or Value Village, all the good ones are gone by now. I got mine in the middle of September. Just so you know, the ones I've been wearing that you've been watching throughout the, middle of September. Like as soon as they had their Halloween stuff up, that's when I went. Mainly because to get costumes for someone of my girth, you got to get the extra large or extra large because the vast majority of them, those one size fit mosts, don't fit me. Anyway, we're not here to talk about that. I promised you something special this week, didn't I? Yes. Well, I have something special for you. Very special to me personally. And I think I've mentioned these before, but I wanted to really dive in and give you an up-close look at them. So, of course, we've been talking about the classic monsters all this month and having a lot of fun with that along the way. So, I wanted to show you a little something that I've had since I was a kid. And that's this. Movie Monsters. This was kind of my, I don't know what you'd call it, my go-to guide for all the classic movie monsters and my introduction to a lot of them, my initial education to them. And then a few years later, I got this one as well. Monsters from the Movies. And this just furthered my monster education. And not just that, but also my early film education in a lot of cases. Because as I've discussed with the Geeky Boys on many occasions, Stoudman in particular has postulated this many times in the past. The history of horror, like in film, is very much the history of film. You know, if you almost all the sort of big cutting-edge innovations that have happened in film are reflected in the horror genre. And so if you go back and you go through the history of horror films, you are seeing the history of film, and you can see how it changes through all the different eras of film to reflect, you know, the world at the time and what people liked at the time. And it's really quite interesting looking at film history through the eyes of the horror genre. So, in many ways, these books are very responsible for fostering my interest in early film. Even as a kid, looking at these pictures, it's like I didn't care that these were black and white movies. I just thought the monsters looked really cool, and I wanted to see those movies. So, let's take a closer look at Movie Monsters and Monsters from the Movies. Two books that meant a lot to me growing up, and, well, I've hung on to them all these years and will hang on to them for the rest of my years. Today, on a closer look on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. So, I don't know about you, but I can't wait to dive into these and show you guys why they were so cool to me growing up. So let's head straight on down to the black box and take a closer look. Okay, so let us begin at the beginning with Movie Monsters by Alan Ormsby, originally published in 1975. You can still find this online, by the way. I did poke around a little bit before doing this closer look, just out of curiosity. And there are still copies out there in the wild if you want to, you know, have it for your own collection for whatever reason. Now, as you will see, this book has been very well loved. You can see, like, major water damage, and the pages are all yellowed and everything. But let me just give you a look-see here. So, very nice. I like the simple layout. See, now here, talk about education. This was where I first learned who Lon Chaney was. And I found this absolutely fascinating that this man had pioneered movie makeup and monster makeup and had done. Now, as a kid, I took this literally. I thought, that, wow, he actually did 1,000 faces. Of course, it's really just an expression, but he did a lot. Like, he did a lot of characters, especially through the silent era. He did so many different characters, not just for horror movies either, just in general. He would be, who knows what he really looked like. And speaking of which, there's one of his most famous creations right there, the Phantom of the Opera. Yeah, just amazing stuff here. And what was it? I remember reading, maybe it wasn't in this one, but I swear I read somewhere that he used fish hooks to pull his cheeks back or something like that. I don't know how true that is. That may just be urban legend, but that he was, I was like, wow, that man really suffers for his art. And then here we have the Wolfman. But I mean, as you can see, this is just a who's who of classic monsters with like lots of little bits of information about them and such, and also about the makeup, because part of this book is about putting on your own monster show, which I'll get to in just a little bit here. So lots of pictures of the Frankenstein monster here. So in addition to learning about Lon Chaney, I also learned the name Jack Pierce from this book, and as the man who did all of these wonderful monster makeup creations for the Universal Monsters, and great stuff. And as I said, like, this was largely my introduction to a lot of these monsters. Like, this was before I had seen most of the movies, so I would just see these photographs and read the accompanying text and just be absolutely fascinated. And I would really want to see the movies that these characters came from. Two Draculas, yeah, so this is where I first learned that there were different actors who played Dracula, and this of course is two of the most famous ones, Bela Lugosi and Christopher Lee. And here, I think I have seen this movie, but not for a very long time, and it seems to be unavailable right now, on any format, which is very strange. I would love for this version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde to come back, but I love how they do the progression here and such, just like screaming, and then he's just he is Mr. Hyde now. That's just pretty cool. I like that a lot. Bride of Frankenstein, wonderful iconic photograph there. The beautiful Elsa Lanchester, very cool. And Creature from the Black Lagoon. Very cool. I honestly, I don't know what I can say about this. It's pretty self-explanatory. Blackula, yeah, so they even cover Blackula in this. And I only just saw Blackula for the first time ever, like, a couple of months ago. So, yeah, for the longest time, I had no idea. Like, I just thought, wow, cool, like a different sort of take on Dracula. And I just really loved the look, like the style of the makeup and everything. I just thought looked really cool. And then Young Frankenstein, which again, it was a long time before I actually saw the movie. But so this was, just reading the description, I was really, again, just fascinated by this different take on it. And I didn't realize that it was a comedy, actually. I thought that it was, this was also at a time when I, being a kid, I thought Frankenstein was the name of the monster, not the creator. So I thought it was going to be like about a teenage Frankenstein monster or something. Like, I had no idea. But very cool. And of course, we know it's classic. So then we get into this, which is kind of a how-to thing. So we get just this tiny little section at the beginning here to give us our crash course in famous movie monsters, and then we get into there's the author as a vampire and stuff like that, and then here he is again doing a monster play with his friends, and very cool. And then it just gives you all kinds of tips about lighting and makeup, and how a lot of the times you don't even need makeup, you just have sort of creepy lighting and that's all you need. But all kinds of stuff about monster makeup and costume tips, and you even have a fake blood recipe, and how to do Dracula's makeup, and all these really cool tips. Even Blackula, Countess Dracula, so you get, you know, all the diversity is covered. It's just a wonderful, wonderful book for kids who are into monsters. You know, you get all these different. Shows you how to do like a mummy hand, to make it look all decayed and stuff. The Melting Man. This was, now I knew nothing about the movie The Incredible Melting Man, and obviously it was probably a little too intense to include in a book like this. But so this was my first hint that there was a character out there called the Melting Man. I was like, what is this Melting Man? Like I was really curious about it. And again, one that I did not see until just a couple years ago. I actually did a Halloween review of it. And then Wolfman. It's pretty cool. I like how they did that. And Mr. Skull, yeah. Mr. Skull became the inspiration for a character I wrote into a story. I called mine Dr. Skull. And basically, just like that. He was like a sort of a Grim Reaper type who also happened to be kind of an evil sorcerer. And it was a secret agent story, of course. It was like a James Bond type of thing. James Bond, well, more Get Smart than James Bond. This was pretty cool. I actually made this at one point. It shows you how to make a Frankenstein head out of a paper bag. So I tried to make this. I sadly don't have any pictures, but I thought it was pretty cool how you put it all together. And then there you go. And then there's little kid as Frankenstein. And then here, the monster of Frankenstein, basically just a little play that you can put on with your friends and stuff like that. There was one here. Yeah, here it is. How to turn it from Dr. Jekyll to Mr. Hyde right before their very eyes. And, okay, just to summarize here, what the idea is you use makeup of a specific color. And what you do is you have a certain colored light that renders that makeup invisible, shining on your actor. And then you change the color of the light, like you change it to a different colored light, which reveals the makeup. So you just kind of change the color of the light, and you literally get a before their very eyes transformation. Like, what a simple, clever idea. You know, I love that stuff. The disappearing ghost, the floating head, just all kinds of gags that you can do to freak out your audience. Sorry, I'm going to move it down a little bit. And props, and yeah, just generally great little book for kids, and one that I've always treasured. So I would have been 3 when this was published. I don't think I got it when I was 3. I think I got it a few years later, but wonderful book. And that section at the beginning in particular about the monsters, and also actually the stuff about the makeup and whatnot, was, even though it's not something I really implemented, I was just really fascinated by the process, you know, and getting some insight into what actually went into creating all these famous movie monsters. So speaking of which, a few years later, I got this book. Now, this book actually was published originally before the other one. This was published in 1972. This edition is from 1980. It's actually a reprint, like a revised edition. So, The Weird and Horrible Library, Monsters from the Movies. And that is a beautiful freaking painting, by the way. I love that depiction of the Universal monsters. So this is a really, really cool book. This one is a little bit more mature. It gets more. So there's the chapters there, and so we'll just get into it. Yeah, so this is a lot more dense in terms of the text and information, but also has a lot more pictures. And this is strictly about the movie monsters themselves. So if we go through a little bit here, yeah. So, oh, and if you notice some pictures are circled, I should explain. Consider the era this is from. This is early 80s, like barely out of the 70s. My dad had his own company, and at that company he had recently acquired a photocopy machine, which was like cutting-edge technology at the time. So I said, hey, can you photocopy some of these pictures? Now, the photocopier, of course, was only black and white, but that's fine because all the pictures are black and white. So I basically went through my book and circled the ones that I wanted him to photocopy. So that way I could have versions of the pictures I could cut out and use for stuff, right? Without having to deface the book. And there you go. That's my introduction to George Méliès. Is that George Méliès? Abominable Snowman? Yes, Méliès, or Méliès, the French silent filmmaker who really pioneered a lot of special effects technology and was really quite imaginative and innovative. And so we got all these different sections. So man-made monsters. So this would be like Frankenstein. Where are we here? Yeah, here we are. Speaking of which, this is the original 1910 Thomas Edison Frankenstein film, which at the time that this was published was considered to be a lost film. It has since been found, and you can actually just go onto YouTube and watch it. It's not even like 15 minutes long, but pretty cool. The first ever film appearance of Frankenstein, right there. And then, of course, the one everybody knows, Boris Karloff. Again, mentioning Jack Pierce. Jack Pierce's triumph. Karloff's makeup. Absolutely. Jack Pierce was just a true pioneer of monster movie makeup, and it's largely thanks to him that we have such memorable monsters from the Universal era. There you go, Bride of Frankenstein. This one's pretty cool. I've not actually seen any of the Hammer films, Frankenstein movies. I've seen a couple of their Dracula ones. That's something I'm probably going to do as a Halloween fest of its own. This time we're kind of focusing on the older stuff and some of the remakes and whatnot. But Hammer is something I would like to devote an entire Halloween to because, well, there's so many, and also I haven't seen a lot of them. So here we have the Golem. It was quite a few years before I actually saw this one. Really, really good. I wish it would get a Blu-ray release because I'd love to add a proper edition of it into my collection. I just have like a public domain bootleg of it, basically, that a fellow horror aficionado gave me. So go into some history of some of the monsters. This is the John Barrymore silent version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Very cool. I've never seen that. I would love to see that one. Yeah, and here's the Frederick March version, which, again, I would love to get a proper release again, because it seems to be very hard to come by right now. I don't know why. And then here we've got, oh yeah, Werewolf of London. There you go. So it was a long time before I actually saw Werewolf of London, not until I got the Legacy collection in the mid-2000s there. Yeah, and then, of course, another Jack Pierce. Oh yeah, Jack Pierce Strikes Again. There you go. So we got the incredible Lon Chaney Jr. Werewolf or Wolfman makeup. I was a teenage werewolf, which I don't think I've ever actually seen it. I need to correct that one of these days. Page is torn there. Oliver Reed, Curse of the Werewolf. I remember being disturbed by this picture as a kid because he was all bloody. And I was kind of curious about the Hammer films, because the Hammer films... this was where I first learned about Hammer films as well. Because prior to this, I mainly just knew about the Universal ones from the other book. But this one goes more into the Hammer ones as well, as you can see. And to me, just the fact that a horror film studio was called Hammer, it really seemed appropriate to me. And also the fact that all the pictures that they have from the Hammer ones appear to be a little bloodier, kind of both intrigued and frightened me. So, very cool. What is this one? Oh, The Fly. Yes, The Fly, of course. Which I have seen. I never saw the sequel, but I've seen the original a few times. Some classic Vincent Price. We'll go through here and get more history of monsters. Here we go. And speaking of introduction to early stuff, this was the first I'd ever heard of The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. It is now one of my favorite silent horror films. It's just so good. Yeah, and there was just something really eerie to me about these old black and white photos of these old silent films. Just something kind of mysterious and creepy about them. And then here we have the Island of Lost Souls. And Bela Lugosi is one of those dudes there. I can't quite tell which one because they all kind of look weird. But yeah, he's one of them apparently. Which is interesting because it's 2 years after he did Dracula. It's like, wow, he was already reduced to bit parts. And there, of course, we have Claude Rains as the Invisible Man. So good in that movie. Actually, pretty much anything with Claude Rains, I'm there. He was just such a compelling actor. And here we got Varney the Vampire, or Feast of Blood. Yes. 1847 vampire novel. Yeah, That's one I need to check out one of these days. I'm really fascinated by the early history of horror, and I've really been enjoying reading. I have read a lot of the older like ghost stories and stuff, like Algernon Blackwood and Ambrose Bierce, that sort of stuff. I've read quite a few of those, but I'd like to read some of the other like novellas and novels from that era as well that sort of helped to shape the genre. So there we go. Like this is one of the famous sort of I don't know, kind of a buried alive one. Yeah, it's called The Resurrected Corpse. Yes, this is kind of one of the origins of the vampire lore as well. So I really like how this book goes into the history. And there's, of course, is Count Orlok. That was the first I'd ever seen of Count Orlok. Basically, all the pictures you're seeing here, for me, was the first time I had seen a lot of these characters. And the first time I'd ever heard of them. Like, I had no idea at the time that there was such a back history of horror movies and monsters and such, and I was just absolutely fascinated by it and really wanted to dive into these movies and see what I've been missing all these years. So there, of course, we have Christopher Lee as Dracula, and then here we have him, well, dying. Never seen that one, actually, The Horror of Dracula. It's another one it's only available on DVD here right now. We never got a Blu-ray release. I really wish we'd get like proper sets of the Hammer films here. It's going to make doing that Halloween a challenge. Then we have Christopher Lee as the Mummy. So they did a whole series of Mummy movies. They did a whole series of Frankenstein and Dracula movies. Both. Yes, let's do both of those. White Zombie, yes, where the band clearly got their name from. Never seen that one. There's still like so many that I haven't seen. I Walked with a Zombie. I believe I've seen that one. There was something chilling about this picture to me too, just seeing the animal hanging there like that. Just really kind of freaked me out as a kid. And then we'll just go through the whole damn book. Why don't we? Why not? Promise you something special. King Kong, which of course I've seen many times. Love it. Great stuff. And Creature from the Black Lagoon, of course. Godzilla. Oh, yeah. Great stuff there. I saw a lot of Godzilla movies as a kid. Godzilla vs. King Kong. Yeah, I saw that one Saturday afternoon on one of the local channels. The Beast of Hollow Mountain. I've never seen that, but I want to. Basically, I want to see everything that's in this book. I think that's it for the photos. Yeah, then we're into the index. This is pretty cool because it does give you a breakdown of all the different movies that are mentioned. There's quite a lot. Yeah, so in short, between the two of these, absolutely invaluable to my monster and early horror education. You know, if you have a budding horror aficionado in your home, you know, a little one who is interested in the monsters, I highly recommend both of these books. I think they are a wonderful introduction to the classic monsters, and as you see, I mean, it gives you a wide range from the silent era all the way through till you know, about the early 60s, I'd say, is the range that it covers. So I mean, it covers like the first 40 or 50 years worth of movie monsters, and you know, and what kid who loves a good scare isn't going to love that? So I highly recommend these books. They were invaluable to me as a youth, and I hope that they can be invaluable to some youths of today for similar reasons. So there you go. Now you know. It was these two books that were my primary early education in both the horror genre and just, you know, early film in general. And I think it's great because it gave me a foundation on which I could build. So, of course, as a kid, I tended to lean more towards horror and sci-fi stuff because that's, you know, that's what kids like. But as I grew, the interest that had begun with those expanded to other genres and other parts of the world of film, early and modern. So, thank you, books. You've definitely helped me over the years, and I will always be grateful for the education and respectful interest you gave me early in life that I have carried into my adult life. I'm literally talking to my books here. This is how late it is and how wired I am on caffeine. Alrighty, that is it for this week's Closer Look, and that is it for the Halloween Closer Looks, actually. So, hope you enjoyed. Hope you have a great Halloween, but you'll get plenty more from me between then and now. I mean, there's 2 more days left. There's the rest of today left. So, stay tuned. Lots more cool stuff coming your way. We're not quite done with this this party yet. Alrighty. So that is it from me to you for now. So I'll see you next time in whatever form that takes. Until then, thanks for watching. Big thanks to my Patreon sponsors. And sayonara.